65% of the population is reactionary to emotions, which means their EQ is not at a place where they can process and listen and continue a conversation. That means 2 out of every 3 people that you're working with in any capacity don't have the emotional intelligence to roll with it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and all the leaders may have a higher level of potential EQ. Being like aware of that to come and speak so that everyone can be heard and understood.
Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic podcast. This is your host, Ralph Burns, the founder of Tier 11.
And I am your co-host, Lauren E. Petrullo, the founder of Mongoose Media.
We're so glad you joined us today. We're doing a different intro than we usually do because Lauren's at a conference today. Where exactly are you?
I'm in Park City, Utah today at the Elite Leadership Summit.
I hear you did some biking and it didn't end all that well. Or maybe it didn't start all that well. I didn't get the whole story.
Okay, well, I mean, this is a podcast. Too long. Don't listen. It's not an option here. Let's be clear. This event had a pre-event day with an activity. So there's over 100 people at this event coming from all over the U.S. We even got people from England. And there were 3 options for pre-event activities: whitewater rafting, mountain biking, and a scavenger hunt.
Okay.
I'm too competitive that I thought if I do the scavenger hunt, I'm going to lose friends because I'm too competitive and I can't have dead weight on a team.
You got to win.
When there's a prize involved. Yeah.
Yep.
And then my flight didn't align with whitewater rafting. Like I didn't want to risk it. So I was like, oh, I'll do mountain biking. I was like, I've never been mountain biking, Park City. I don't know anything about Park City. Like I've been to Utah once on a layover. And I told my husband, he's like, hold on. It says experienced riders only.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that's adult talk for you have to know how to ride a bike.
Right. I
go to conferences. Mm-hmm. I was like, I know who's going to be there. It's older adults. Mm-hmm. And so when you see experienced riders only, to me, that means you know how to ride a bike. You're in relative shape.
So you've been riding a bike since you're like maybe, 8 years old or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you're experienced.
Yeah.
Got it.
In my opinion, my husband's opinion was like, this is dumb. You shouldn't do this. Do the scavenger hunt. Lose friends, not your
life,
like insurance. Yeah.
Right. Or your left arm or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say after biking, I sent my husband a single text. You were right.
So there was a crash involved, I guess, is what you're saying.
Oh my gosh. There were 2 crashes. One, again, I've never been mountain biking. We put on helmets and this one gentleman, Ricky, came from the UK. He had like a motocross helmet and elbow pads. And I was like, oh, this is getting serious. Like I thought I was at the adult table because they were talking about how like one gentleman, Mike, he's got 7 bikes. Trina, she's biked. Moab, she's biked all these other places. Like, oh my goodness. What did I sign up for? Everyone has done this before. And so I was like getting intimidated. Like I bought, is it here? I even bought like a fanny pack, Ralph, because I thought, oh, I'm going to be taking pictures. We're biking.
Right. Now you're you're in it. Like this is mountain biking.
We took a ski lift up, like we were on this. And,
one of those,
I was holding on. Everyone else, they were so chill. Like they're sitting. They didn't cover us the way you do, like when you're on the slopes. And it's the same one. Like people go skiing and snowboarding here. So like how it covers over you so you don't fall off.
Right.
The people I was with opted for it to be up, and I was like, I'm hanging on to the back, hanging on to the side. I'm like, are you guys okay? Do you want this seatbelt on?
The thing that goes down in the front you're talking about.
Yeah. Like the Disney overhead latch.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, did you need it? And I was like, no.
So you're immediately out of your league, just going up the hill. And then coming down
sweating.
There's Park City, Utah is fairly mountainous, so my guess is that it was a very steep ride with lots of rocks, trees, all sorts of things that you need to watch out for. hence the helmets, the elbow guards, all the things that you probably really
But
need.
I only had a helmet. I only had a helmet.
Pack.
Yeah, it held my phone.
Pretty good.
Yeah, like, so, I mean, it was beautiful. Like, we were carving through trees. Like, yeah, there were bikes. Like, I've never ridden a bike that has a front brake and a back brake. I just pedaled backwards and it stopped. Again, let's like talk about like my naivete of joining this group.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're totally out of your league. So the group itself, like it's called Elite Entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah. Elite. Yeah. They were elite bikers.
Elite bikers, elite entrepreneurs. I mean, you're an elite entrepreneur, maybe not on the biking side of the equation. I'm kind of like you though. Like if I'm going to play a game with somebody, like this is the reason why I always tell my wife, it's like I hate games because I hate to lose so badly. It's not fun.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I mean, I was in it like I was riding the brakes. We were doing these curves. Like I was like, wow, that was a steep curve. But like it was beautiful. We were going through this tree. So like I can see why people fall in love with this. And like we had thick tires. So like it was a little bumpy. I was like, ooh, they're like, you need to hover so your pedals are even. You don't want like this because if one foot's low and you hit a tree root or a rock, you can flip. Right. Don't hard brake your front. You can flip forward, take corners. I was like, all right, yeah, okay, this makes sense. Like, I got this. I'm young. Okay, I can do this. So we're doing it, and it's amazing. We go like 5 minutes. I'm like cruising the brakes. David, the CEO of this group, amazing guy, was like, I'm going to stay behind you. I was like, I'm going to slow you down because they're all not riding brakes. I'm thinking like go-karting, right? When you go go-karting, I've gone with friends. I'm hovering over that brake. Some people can be reckless. Like I've got health insurance, but like I've got only health insurance. So I'm going down this, they're braking every time, like they're taking breaks, waiting for us to catch up. I was like, this is really cool. And then I got confident. So I was riding the brakes a little less. I was allowing a little extra. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm on a motorcycle. There's no way I wasn't doing at least like 20, 30 miles an hour. And we would like have these curves. And the first crash I had, like I fell off because the curve was too wide. And I was like, oh God. So I fell off and I was like, cool. You know, I didn't get a snake bite, which is like the pedal smacking into your shin. I was okay. I was like, cool. Take the curves, corners slower. I can do it. Bet. Right. So I kept going. And then these paths got smaller. It wasn't gravel, it was sand, it was dirt, it was all these things. We were going down the mountain. And at one point, the path got really small. The mountain was to our left. There was really big rocks. I bucked off my bike. Like I didn't fall off, but like I was up this big rock I went over. I like got spanked like at least 6 inches. Yeah. Like my wheel, I was on one wheel. And I was like, okay, I need to slow down and get control. I didn't get control. And apparently like I cartwheeled over my bike at least 1.5 turns. I was going down this hill. I had to let go of the bike. And I was just like trying to find a tree to hold on to because I couldn't stop sliding down the side of the hill. Like there was a skinny little beam. I felt like Simone Biles on a bike, this small little path. Yeah. My legs went wide. I went over the bike and now I'm littered in bruises.
I can't believe you're actually alive. So I'm glad you did survive to do the show here today. But it's like sounds like you narrowly escaped death. Really, with that tale of woe.
It wasn't recorded. Like there's a guy with the motocross. He had a camera, but he was so far ahead. They were like, "Do we need to go back and see if they're okay?" And they had like communicated. But the two people behind me saw it, and I think they were like, "Yeah, is she okay?
Do we need an ambulance? Do we need like a medevac?
A sled?" They thought they were going to have to get a sled to get me off.
Oh, because you're on like a ski mountain, so that would make sense, right?
David came down. He sat with me. Like my leg was shaking. Like, and he's like, just calm down. I was like, it's the adrenaline. Right. I'm okay. And then I was like, oh, I can't walk back up this hill. It's too steep for me to carry the bike. So he carried the bike. Another came and helped. And we got to the top. I'm like, all right, let's keep going. Because I looked at the bike. I was like, this is a moment of truth. I can either back off or keep moving. And I'm fine. I was really lucky. Like, it could have been bad. Look, my glasses didn't break. Like nothing.
It's amazing you survived, actually, because that's like I've done some mountain biking. Not to that degree, but it's like when you're going and you hit something Like you can so easily like go ass over, like right over the handlebars.
Perpetually.
And, like literally like land your head on a rock. And you're like, that's a TBI. Like that's a traumatic brain injury. Like I've seen guys that are paralyzed from it. Like you're lucky to survive.
So lucky. So lucky. But it did solidify me as a badass in this group because
it's good.
They were all like, everyone knew who I was. I was like the topic of discussion at the beginning. They were like, this is resilience. This is what a true entrepreneur does. You get thrown one way and you come back up, rise to the surface. And I was like, I knew no one in this room, Ralph, 0 people.
So this is
and
all
within
part
5 minutes, everyone knew me.
That's all a part of the strategy, actually, for you to do conferences, which is interesting because you're sort of doing like this conference strategy where you're the only marketing person, which we could probably do a whole show about. But let's talk about the conference itself. So it's Elite Entrepreneurship by Brett Gillard.
Yeah.
Right?
And so it's Brett, there's David Gillian. So it's this is the, like, look at the book they gave me. Like I paid to be here. Let's be clear. This is not like a freebie conference at all. I flew here. Right. I'm staying overnight. I paid quite a bit of money to be in the room, but it's only for brand, like leaders, like businesses that are doing at least 7 figures a year. And the leaders are here, and a lot of them bring their teams.
Sure.
Because it's a conference about being the best leader you can, like level up your leadership. I was like, oh, is this the mountain I fell down?
That's probably it. That's actually a picture of you. I think I saw you in that picture there wrapped around a tree. We haven't talked about leadership just as a general subject on this show in quite some time. And I think it's interesting. When I was on, I found this fascinating. But when I was on a podcast with Neil Patel, who you know, and we were talking about like, what's the biggest trend right now? And Neil Patel runs like a lot of companies, but he's a younger guy than I am. Like he's in just sort of a different space, but super successful. Like he's had way more failures than he's had successes. He's like the biggest thing that's going on right now, and the biggest skill that I need to learn is leadership, which I was stunned by, but really it actually makes a lot of sense. Like if you're somebody that listens to this show, you're probably fairly good at digital marketing. Maybe you're a director of marketing. Maybe you're a media buyer. Maybe you run an agency. We know a lot of agencies listen to this show. Or maybe you're a CMO, or you might be somebody who does it all. Like we've sampled, the entire list that listens here, and sort of it's a good mixture of that. But everybody in every single role, one thing that always comes back to, whenever I'm talking to my team during the week, I've got a senior leadership team, and then we talk about sort of our middle managers and so forth. So many of our problems and challenges end up becoming leadership issues, which is like this phrase like, oh, it's all about leadership. It's just a cliche. Yeah. But it's not, because there's real tactics to it. I mean, I wrote a book on leadership and management, which we'll leave in the show notes. But the point is like, the idea behind getting to a certain level of success, is about marketing and being able to understand all the strategies that we're talking about, get the business metrics, all those things that we've been discussing for the last couple of shows here. But at the core of it all is like, if you're leading a team, you actually need the skills that you're probably learning here at this conference. So I'm curious to know like some of your takeaways, some of the things that you've learned, some of the things that have really stood out as you go to more and more of these conferences. Your team is probably going to continue to expand, because it sounds like you're obviously getting some business from it, which means you need these skills. Like even if you're the CEO lady, like you're still going to have to be able to sort of guide and lead. And obviously, as they say, a leader that no one is following is just going out for a walk. You actually have to have people following you, create a followership, which is a John Maxwell statement, which is a great leadership, like all his books I've read like hundreds of times. The point is like, what's the big takeaways that you've learned from this conference here?
So like big takeaways. One is, like you said, like investing in leadership is going to be critical if you're trying to get to the next point. Who I am and what got me to where we are today is not going to get me to the next level. And a large part of that
say
is...
that one again for our audience. Because I say this all the freaking time. And say it again, because I think it's important for people to realize this. And that's why they stop scaling as a business, is precisely that thing. What did you just say? Say it again.
Who I am and what got me to where I am today is not who I need to be and what will get me to where I'm going tomorrow.
Truer words were never spoken. So you're learning sort of that next stage.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a team of, was it 30 or 40 people, thereabouts, a little bit
31.
larger than that, 31. Okay. And obviously, as you grow, you're going to have leaders of people. You're going to have, you're going to have to cultivate a culture of leadership.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about like one of your CSs, one of your CSMs, you call them client success managers. We call them client success owners. Same thing.
Yeah.
Leading and training and teaching them how to lead. Like I find that that's one of the biggest things that oftentimes is missing, especially if you're an agency and you're listening to this, is you need to lead the client, but you also need to lead your team. And leadership is just like, it is kind of a cliched sort of fuzzy word, but what are some of the tactics that you started to deploy, or at least some of the things that you've learned here?
Sure. So one of the tactics I deployed at least was, so this gentleman, Tim, I just want to make sure, Tim Maxwell and then Trina Celeste, they had talked about empathy in the workplace and leading by example. And what I had implemented immediately, Tim had said, if you haven't taken, to anyone listening, if you haven't taken one of your direct reports out to dinner in the last 2 weeks, do that, because they need to feel appreciated beyond. We're in this hybrid environment, come back to work from home, only work from the office, whatever that kind of thing is. And we've lost that touch. So my team is remote. Your team is remote. And I happen to have been in Chicago a few weeks ago. So I met with 2 of the team members that are there. But I couldn't take them out to dinner. So I connected with one of our department heads, one of the leaders who I'm at this conference saying she should be here too, which is because I'm seeing all these other brands bringing their teams, because it's the leader who's leading the leaders and the leaders learning. But the tactical thing I did during their talks, I was like, hey, I'm out of the office this week. It's more stress on you guys. How is the team doing? And she said, hey, I appreciate you recognizing that when you're out of the office, it can be harder for us because we don't have your direction and support. And so in the conversations, I can't take you guys all out to dinner, but what if you and your department take a half day tomorrow? And the feedback I got back, the kindness and gratitude was for sure, it's Friday. I'm in the past because I'm in Utah. They're on the East Coast. So it's they're beyond grateful for it. And then within 25 minutes, I kid you not, Ralph, that team submitted to me something, because when they talked about, hey, we're going to take a half day off, they're all like, oh my gosh, thank you. This has been a really hard week. They see me in Utah. So while I'm doing these 12-hour days at this conference, what they see is oh, I'm mountain biking in Utah. Oh, I'm meeting all these new people. I'm going out to sushi. So that can be challenging for sure. I get that. They were beyond ecstatic to have a half day, so a longer weekend, that within 25 minutes of them having that conversation, they all met together. They came up with a solution, Ralph, I kid you not, that is saving me hundreds of dollars. They did a creative solution to something I haven't been able to solve. And that was just in the casual, safe space of them not feeling the pressure of, boss is out of the office. We need to make sure we're maintaining up to her standards without the support that she would normally provide us.
Yeah. Now, that meeting where that evolved, or that came from, would you have normally been in that meeting?
So it wasn't a meeting. It was a meeting that was prompted saying, hey, do you and your department want to take it? She's like, okay. I was like, you own it. Let them know. So then she got her team together.
I see.
They had in a meeting saying, hey guys, what do you think about taking a half day on Friday? We've been working really hard this week. I think you all deserve it. And then that's where they just had these water cooler conversations.
And how did they do it? Did they do it on a Zoom call? How did they actually? Okay. Got
or
it.
maybe whatever. They did it virtually, so they all connected together, discussed, and in that environment. So like I can't take them out to eat, but 4 hours, fine. That's the same thing, right? So they can have a half day, a longer weekend, and that was more valuable. And a lot of that's come out of this was like with the empathy side, knowing what your team is motivated by and tying it back into it. So that's a huge tactical component. Like Ralph, I know you like guitars, right? I know that you listen to music that you think is great, but it's definitely a different genre than my type of music.
We've had a couple huge exchanges on text about that, but yeah, go ahead.
It's like coming for violence with that one. But if you find out what that individual is personally interested, if you show that you care, and then you make your business goals translated to what they're interested in. So if it was talking about like, hey, we want to go after like the Gibson level of campaigns and creative, or if we're like talking about like, hey, these are the different bars and we want to do chord progression and tie that guitar language and nomenclature into our vision of the business, you'll feel more invested and connect to it, as well as feeling that you're heard and cared about as a person, so that you'll have greater buy-in on the vision. And the examples, like Tim Maxwell, I mean, he's got like, I don't know, I think it's like 250 million a year company, incredibly successful, works with a lot of blue collar individuals. So like showing leadership to individuals that like may have like a flat structure. I mean, it was incredible. There's so much value given in the room. But when he said the moments that he showed he cared, he's got people that have been with him, 16 or of the 30 people he started with are with him 2 decades later. And the cost of replacing someone, we all know, is at least 1.5 times that person's salary.
Yeah. So what you're talking about really here is empathy and caring for your direct reports or all individuals. Like what give me some context here. I mean, are these direct reports, like, I don't know how your structure works within Mongoose Media, but like you obviously have people that report to you, and then obviously there's other people that are doing the work, dotted line maybe to you at some, like, how does it, like, just give me an example as to like how this would sort of roll.
One thing of that example was, he said everyone needs an org chart, but they're like, don't call it org chart, call it organizational structure, so that people know who that reporting line is. Like some people are flat. We have teams, like we have 5 departments, and there's the head of that department, there are people inside the department, and those roll up. And what was interesting of like those that didn't have an org chart, like, or an organizational structure, like if you're listening to this and you don't have one, like pause this podcast, do it. I use Glue Maps, GLOO Maps. It's free. Like grab it. Because I found it really important. We started getting super serious about it 1.5 years ago because we kept growing the team. And they're like, who is this person? What do they do? So a single place that you can find what everyone does and who they report to is massive. But in that like other element, something that was really good about like the caring side. So you want to care for your direct reports, and you have to lead by example so that they can care for their direct reports. But you need to have it embedded in your culture. And like Trina Celeste, like I even like got her book because she like talked about like goats and gardeners, which was like amazing. But she had this really good line, was like, if you're not empathetic, you're a pathetic leader. And the cost of empathy and like how people listen and how we respond to emotions. She had said like this statistic pulled from a bunch of people. It's like 65% of the population is reactionary to emotions, which means their EQ is not at a place where they can process and listen and continue a conversation. I mean, 2 out of every 3 people that you're working with in any capacity don't have the emotional intelligence to roll with it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of leaders may have a higher level of potential EQ, and being like aware of that to come and speak so that everyone can be heard and understood. Like, I mean, Ralph, there's just so much great stuff going on. It's hard to like roll up into a few examples.
Do you find that some of the best ideas in the business come from not necessarily you as sort of the visionary, but from the people that are maybe frontline and people? Like the ones that I hate to say like below you in the hierarchy, but there is always a hierarchy in a business. But like there's always like the genius in 1,000 helpers example, which is like Steve Jobs, I suppose. But most of his was actually sort of through his assistant. The point is like most of the ideas for Apple did not come from the individuals.
Sure.
But it's like, have you found like when you're growing your business, like part of leadership is actually, I sort of refer to it as being lead by being led, which basically means that you ask a lot of questions. You don't actually lead the team to what you think is the best solution. You allow them to come to the solution. If it just so happens to be your solution, all the better. Because if it does come back to the fact that it's their idea, they're going to be that much more vested in wanting it to be successful, but also they're going to feel heard. And most importantly, like you actually care what they think. So sort of combining a lot of different sort of psychologies into one. Have you deployed that all that much within your organization? Or is this something that you're now saying like, holy crap, I need to start doing this on a more widespread basis? What's your sense?
Like, yes. And I mean, I'm probably a lot of people here are like, I think I deployed it. And then when in reality, like, I can't be the one that answers it. I can say that like some really amazing things that have come out of it. Like really, like there's this thing that we're launching in the next few months. Like we don't have the trademarks yet, so I'm not even going to talk about it, but there's some like amazing stuff I had zero involvement on. And I think like, yes, we've been doing it, but there's so much more we can do. So now I'm trying to set up the team to be in a space. And I think we're like the higher question being, how do you guys come up with like these creative ideas or like these new solutions, or at least for Mongoose, how we're growing, is less about the who, but more about the like how it's possible. And I think like setting up space in calendars where you have vision meetings, like you do this really well, Ralph. Like you guys meet quarterly. All your leaders come together and talk about this. And I've been like, I mean, you're a huge mentor of mine and you talked about leadership so much to me, which is where like a lot of it prompted me wanting to go to this type of leadership training, because
appreciate that.
You've been running a remote team for decades. Like you were doing remote before remote was cool, like years before remote was cool.
Well, yeah. I mean, but it also, when I was in the corporate world, I actually led remote teams too. So, which was sort of funny to think about it now, but it was the same skill set. I mean, I would see people, but 99% of the time I wasn't actually leading them by physically like seeing them face to face. So, but yeah, for sure. I just find it's the essentials. I don't think you can get too good at it. And I think it's the type of thing that I think a lot of people sort of brush aside, and then they reach a certain level of skill and they're like, holy crap, I actually really need this.
Yeah.
And it is the thing that does make the difference. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. And I'm just using Neil as an example because I think he's a super sharp guy, but it's like, I need to figure out how to become a leader now. I've got all these businesses and he was sort of like the genius with 1,000 helpers model. As soon as I realized, and I used to have this, I've said this many times on the show, I had a little Post-it note that said, what did I do today that I never want to do ever again? And every single day I just like checked off another thing. And that basically meant that I would outsource it to somebody else within the organization. And this is the big part, not do it exactly the way that I told them to do it, but give them the framework and allow them to come up with ideas that are better than that. And then help me write the SOP for that. I may give you the framework. This is how I do it. Find a better way.
Okay.
Like go one step more. Like I always sort of say to myself, like whenever we're hiring, and we've got a really good hiring process. A lot of people say, oh, we got a great hiring process. We have an incredible like HR department. And that HR department is incredibly great at hiring. Now, part of that is we want people that are smarter than the ones that we have right now, because that just helps level up the organization. And we're constantly reviewing, every 90 days, like our A's, B's, and C's, which is called, like Jack Welch calls it, like the vitality curve, even though Jack Welch was kind of a scumbag sort of in his later years. But anyway, we'll set that aside. It's actually a really important point because you have to constantly be looking at like, all right, like, because our A's today might be B's tomorrow. because of the way that we
Fair.
hire. And it's like you evolve as a leader and as an organization by constantly up-leveling your people. And I always said, if I could find people that were not complimentary, like compliment me, like everyone sucks up to the boss. I get it. But complimentary does all the stuff that I don't do and does it better. Like that's how you build a great organization. And that I think is leadership.
For sure. I mean, there's so much to it. And I think like an aspect of that leadership, which we've talked about a lot, is it is hiring. Like you have to hire, and like you've talked about like the things you don't want to do. Like they broke it out into 4 chapters, and then people have seen this in various things, but like you have 4 different types of tasks in your business. You have ones where you're learning. Those are $10 an hour tasks where you're learning how to do something. You're doing, that's $100 an hour. You're leading, that's $1,000 an hour. And then you're leading the leaders, that's a $10,000 an hour item. And I think like, so David had done it really, really well. He's the CEO of this brand. He had talked about how like, how do you get out of these different areas? And it's like, where learners at the $10, where learners fail is right. Like, they think about it. You have to like learn lessons, but if they don't take the direction and follow it, they're never going to become a leader. So you had said like, you give your team, hey, here's my framework, take this, learn it, and make it yours. If they take that direction, but don't follow it and don't make it yours, don't make it theirs, then they won't become a leader. And that's where like Trina was like, that, then they're going to be goats. Like you'll have people that are just going to, if they're constantly learning and they're not actually doing, following, and providing, they're goats inside your garden, which is just like trampling over all that you're trying to do. And you want to know who in your business is a gardener that's tending to it and helping it evolve. So taking that framework you gave them and blossoming it into a beautiful lily, or like Azucena, which is someone's name here. And that's what it is in Spanish. And I was like, oh, I love that name. But like, you want a gardener that's going to take it and grow it. But if you have someone that's at like a $10 an hour, right? You have someone that's new, they're learning that. You need them to grow into a doer, not just stay a learner. But if they become a doer, their ultimate goal is going to, of course, be to become a leader. And if there's someone that's a doer and you find someone, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, I have those doers that do this, where the doer is just like constantly asking questions. They're waiting on you, the leader, all the time. They need to know like how to run their tasks and like live in that task. And like, until they become the expert in that subject, they're never going to be able to become a leader. And that's okay. There are going to be people that only want to do, but you have to know and understand if they're just going to be a doer, don't put them in a leadership role and expect them to lead if they're just always the ones that like, I need you to hold my hand. I'm not going to take the initiative and run. So, I mean, it was such a great articulation of those different pieces so that you can be in the role of, as I want to be the leader of the leaders, ideally,
right.
Because
right.
10,000 hours sounds awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, did they talk much about, and this is a big differentiator, I remember talking to Molly Pittman about this years and years ago when she was just trying to figure out whether or not, it's funny because she's now CEO and leading a whole team, but at a point in her career, like I think we actually did a show on this where we talked about the difference between, I'm going to forget the 2 names, but basically it's like just people that want to do the stuff and then people who want to lead people doing the stuff. And I forget the analogy. We quoted some article. I forget what it was. But anyway, it was like, there are certain people that just want to do something really, really, really well and have no interest in ever like climbing the corporate ladder, leading a team, all of that. And I think those types of people, in a lot of cases, like you and I being leaders, we're like, well, that's somebody who's just not that ambitious. But in fact, they actually are. And if you put them in the right role, like you can actually build a very great company. They're never going to assume a leadership role. You know, they're never going to want to manage personnel. You know, I have a fair amount of folks that we have, you know, I could think of 4 or 5, like off the top of my head, that were running their own agencies and didn't want to run the agency anymore, didn't want to run a team. They just wanted to buy media. Yeah.
Yeah. They want to be the leader of that industry, that subject matter. Well, we call them, at Mongoose, we call them rockstars or superstars. So the rock star is like, they're just really good at guitar, right? I'm the guitarist, I'm the rock star, right? Like, if you're not following Ralph on Instagram, you should, because he plays like awesome like guitar riffs. But the rock stars are like, am the John Moran of Google Ads. I've got the tinfoil hat and everything. But John's also a leader. So like he gets to be that superstar because then that superstar is someone that can take on more.
He's a bit like this is a hard one because like let's use John Moran as an example. So John Moran is an absolute rock star. However, he has had a real challenge at teaching that and managing and leading other people into his way of thinking. And that's one of our things that we're spending an inordinate amount of time on that, but because it doesn't come naturally to him. He wants to do it, but it's like he needs to be shown the way. But ultimately, it's like he just teaches by doing. So it's hard. Like you do have a little bit of a hybrid there sometimes with these types of people. But anyway, keep your train of thought. I didn't want to.
No. I mean, but it's like when you have someone as brilliant as John, he's a rock star. Like, and he's been a rock star for decades, right? Like he has become a leader in what he does versus over the people. And now he's graduated into this role. So like where we have like rock stars, like we have, we have individuals that are like amazing at Pinterest. They're amazing at copywriting. They're amazing at SEO. They're amazing at Facebook ads. Then we'll have a few superstars where it's like, cool, I learned Facebook ads. I know Facebook ads really well. I also want to learn Google ads, or I also want to learn TikTok ads, or I also want to learn funnel architecture. So then they become like the person who can sing, dance, and act. So they're not the rock star and like, I am the number one of this product, but I'm a superstar where I can do a lot. And so in that capacity, and then when you get to that level, it's just more often than not, a rock star can only lead other rock stars in that vertical, whereas a superstar can be like a cross-functional leader, which is when you get to that leader of leaders, where most often that becomes that superstar because they've had experiences. And like, again, like I always talk about the Disney experience, and like at Disney, it was really great because who became the CEO or who became the chief operating officer? It's someone who ran the parks division, had experience with hotels, had experience in consumer products, touched a little bit on entertainment, because there's all these different divisions within Disney. And if you have someone who's the chairman of Disney and all their experience is only in parks and resorts, you're missing out on the entertainment side, the CPG side, and so many other aspects. So you need that. You can be a rock star at the parks, but you need to have the experience of like going into cruise, experiencing events, all the other aspects to go into those leadership roles. So Disney's done a great job of like allowing you to move horizontally while scaling vertically your career.
Right. And I think both of those types can potentially evolve into leaders, or they can just be really good followers. Like they can be people that just do the thing really, really well. Like that, the superstar who is good at a lot of things. We kind of refer to that as, like, hey, if you're great at like Facebook ads, Google ads, TikTok ads, SMS, email, CRO, and you're really good at customer interaction. Like those are the things in an agency that most, what I call that? I call that an agency CEO.
Oh, I was like, a unicorn?
Yeah. Because they're going to go out and they're actually going to start their own agency because they're good at all those things.
For sure.
This is like that. It's not for everyone. And like you can think of like any sort of individual business. We're talking about agencies here specifically, but I mean, you're going to have that. The point is like if you're both of those types of individuals can ultimately become leaders, and you really need to find out through. And I find the only way to do this is through quarterly reviews and one-on-one conversations. It's just that simple. Like for all of my leadership team, basically, like they all report to my COO, but I have what's referred to as skip meetings. And every 2 weeks, I have meetings with the people that report to my COO, and I have skip meetings with a lot of the individual people, like double skip meetings, just to kind of keep an eye on, like on our new CSO group. Like I have a couple of media buyers that I talk to all the time. It's like I have select people within the organization because now it's large. I can't meet with everybody once a month. The point is like it's my version of sort of taking them out to dinner or taking them out for coffee, and I just sit and listen.
Okay.
Literally, like that's like the best thing that I can do. And then obviously, like we're running a podcast, we do YouTube lives. I learn more from those meetings than I probably do. And then I sit in on client calls, like every once in a while, I'll just pop in. You know what I mean? Like just that kind of stuff. And I forget who said it. I believe it was Peter Drucker, but it's management by walking around. And I say management by virtually walking around and just sort of getting to know everyone in your organization. Going back to your original point, shows that you care. You actually give a crap about what they think. Not everything that they suggest you're going to implement, but sometimes we actually do.
Yeah.
And I find that is invaluable as an organization grows. And it's harder and harder to do the bigger the organization gets. I once read that Sergey Brin and Larry Page interviewed the first 1,000 Google employees. Can you believe that? Like how many interviews they actually were on? They said it was so important for them to get like the vision of what we were trying to build. And we also wanted to make a connection with everyone. Now it's like however many people are at Google, let's say it's hundreds of thousands, I would imagine at this point. It's like those one-on-one interactions. I think it's lost so much. You have to make a concerted effort to do it. Otherwise, you're just going to lose touch with what's going on. I learn more from them than they do from me. And if you've got a team, like just at a base level, like have one-on-ones with them every single week. Like Thursdays are my one-on-one days. So I just dedicate that whole day to like one-on-one conversations. And it's, 45 minutes, whatever. We kind of go through, I don't really have an agenda because they don't really report to me. I talk to my COO every morning, like for an hour. It's like all of that sort of stuff. So just one-on-one conversations is so vital. Did they talk about, what else did they talk about with regard to that? I mean, I'm sort of espousing some of my own sort of leadership lessons.
No, but it's good though. Cause like you're such a mentor to me that like I follow so much into it. Like I was like, also like, do you see this book they gave us? Like they put the people's presentations in here so that you could really like unplug and write in the notes for all these different individuals that were speaking.
Way to do a conference. Yeah. Sounds like they've got it together.
Their snack game was next level. Whoever did the snacks was the best. Like 1,000%. But like some other things that we had talked about was like, so this gentleman, Morty Hodge, like he was leveraging virtual reality. He sells like, products. So like, again, it was so nice to not be like in internet only spaces because when you have people that are leading, like these are huge, like there's a law firm here with like 30 of their employees.
Wow.
Yeah. So I met paralegals, I met attorneys, I met all different people because they all need to learn and be aligned in vision. But this gentleman, Morty, he was talking about how he leveraged innovation in his business. So they sell air pressure machines. Like these are expensive machines that go into engineering. Like he works behind the scenes, supplying like probably 6-figure products to factories, and how it was important for him to lead his team into this next era. But he schedules an hour of strategic planning on his calendar because he says, I am the leader. I have to set the tone. So I have to do an hour in my calendar every day. Like my team knows this is strategic planning, vision. And that's where he comes in and gives himself the headspace, where what he had done was then leverage virtual reality and Quest to allow people to have mixed reality to see the machines that they're buying. Again, think 6-figure machines, see it in the place. Where does it fit? They can take off, they can see under, they know how to work the machine. And it allowed him to have a better user experience. And that was only possible after he devoted like a year of his time to like being a better leader. And part of that better leadership meant like internally being better, because if the back of the brain was exhausted and stressed, that carried on times 10 to his team. So he had to make sure that he had the headspace where he was as a leader. And then just a lot of people chimed in of like it's easy to get caught in the weeds. And if you're always answering fires and putting those out, you're never actually leading. All you're doing is reacting. So that was really good to hear.
Super important. Like you need that headspace.
Yeah.
You really do. I once read that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, like now they're actually, I mean, even when, they're more involved in the day-to-day business, spend most of their week reading.
Okay.
Like literally, like that's how they get their ideas. I mean, that's an extreme example. Warren Buffett, obviously, he's not like making trades every day, but he reads. And I actually read that Alex Hormozy now, even though he's writing his third book, like 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, he just reads just to get ideas and to give the headspace. And that's where some of his best ideas come from. And that's where Bill Gates like came out with like so many innovations. Buffett, same thing, investment ideas, the whole thing. Like, I think a lot of leaders don't give themselves that space. They feel like their calendar needs to be completely full of meetings to seem like they're doing their job, when in fact, put in a block of time every single week or every single morning or every day to at least, be thinking and reading and figuring out sort of that next stage of growth. Because if you're leading the organization or the department, whatever it is, like you need that time to sort of think about like what's going on right now and how you can sort of take it to the next level. And I think you only do that through like really literally like solitary time, just doing research and or reading. It's super important.
Fair. I admit, like, I don't like solitary time. Like, a few years ago, like, solitary time, like, I had, like, a 3-hour gap. Like, if I had more than 3 hours, I was, like, dark space. But, like, I mean, I read a lot, just not nonfiction. It's like, can I count that and say that?
Well, it's true. Like, that's, I mean, nonfiction or fiction. I mean, I prefer nonfiction myself. My wife always tells me, she always buys me books that are non-business related, although the recent book that she bought me actually is business related. So it's like, it doesn't actually really relax me. But the best ideas that I've had oftentimes are coming from books that are not related to business at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that would be classified as reading time for sure.
Okay, good. I'm currently reading this book called Belladonna, and it has like nothing to do with business. It's like a girl who escapes death, falls in love with a Grim Reaper, like 100% unrelated to business whatsoever.
There might be a little bit of a business tie in there. So final words from this conference. Any other nuggets that you picked up?
Yeah, wait, here. Actually, sorry, I've been taking like so many notes, and I kept writing like, what was my biggest? Oh, you know what? This gentleman, James Perry. So he's a comedian, and like, obviously,
hey, Kevin. Can you cut that out and just go right to the part?
James Perry.
Yeah, go right to the James Perry part. Kevin. Okay, go for it.
So there's this gentleman, James Perry. He's a comedian. He ran like the Studio C, and he created this really good acronym that I liked, and it's loser, but it's loser spelled with 2 L's, so LLOSER. And he said, like, what you need to do is like, you need to let them in. So let your team understand like what the problem is, what are the pain points of the business. You need to listen, like actually listen to be an effective leader. You need to make them owners. And what I really liked about that, he said that is like a lot of the times when we're leaders, we treat our team members as renters. And we know when people rent, they tend to treat the house or apartment not as the same way as if they were an owner. So he's like, oh, for ownership. Space, which again was a theme I kept picking up on, was like, give the team the space to do it. You put on your calendar as a leader, set up like what you do, Ralph, with your quarterly strategic planning. Like you put the space so they know where to put their creative ideas, and they'll know what to do with them, and when to have dedicated time in case they get caught up in the busy. E was for evaluate, so that you can understand what impact their ideas might contribute to, like, as a leader, you want to let them know and evaluate what they're doing and the impact it has to the bottom line. Like a lot of people talked about like vulnerability being really important and like transparency. But this loser acronym ending with R for repeat is like, how do you make sure that as a leader, you ensure that your team members are repeating this, letting them in, taking ownership, even when they fail, and especially when they fail. You just talked about like Neil has more failures than he has successes. I find that remarkable because I don't know about a lot of his failures, but I sure do know a ton about his successes. And if we stop, like it's always that like dig for gold, right? Like, so the repetitive nature of you're not a leader if they do it once and then become too afraid to contribute again. But repeating that process.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm going to paraphrase that. So it's let them in, listen, make them owners. That's the O. Space, the space part is give them space to, or you need space in order to, like what we were talking about before.
Yeah. And then also have like an actual space where if they have ideas where it's outside of the planned space in a calendar, like where can they put those ideas? Yeah. Suggestion box.
This, your virtual suggestion box. Evaluate and then repeat.
Yes.
So repeat for your followers to do the same, or you repeat the cycle?
Get them to repeat the cycle.
Got it. Makes sense. This has been really good. And you've got another day of this. Apparently, yeah. I'm taking you away from like valuable conference time, which we want to get you back to. So you get even more here. Yeah, today we weren't talking about traffic. We weren't talking about marketing, but chances are you're probably leading a team if you're listening to this show, or maybe you want to lead a team at some point in time, or maybe you're leading your customers or your clients. I think all of these lessons here are super, super important. So very interested in hearing what other adventures you go on. I would stay off the bike if you possibly can. Yeah, stay away from the mountains. Fair. Just the conference room is cool. Maybe like a competitive Scrabble tournament, something like that. I mean, Mahjong. Oh my God, my wife actually won her first Mahjong game for the neighborhood like Mahjong group. Like, and these are like people that have been playing for 20 or 30 years, and she just picked it up like 3 weeks ago. So she was so excited. I know.
She should retire.
I know.
Take the win. Take the dub.
Really? Like, and those women are brutal too. It's like mostly there's like two dudes that go there. Like, I'm not going to learn how to play Mahjong. Anyway, she loves it. So maybe there's a Mahjong there. Stay away from the mountain itself. And hopefully we can get more shows like this on Perpetual Traffic, because I do think the subject of leadership and how you lead and how you actually scale and grow as a business is direct proportion to how good of a leader you are, really, in so many ways. So make sure if you listen to the podcast, you subscribe and leave a rating. Go back and listen to previous episodes, and obviously check us out over on our YouTube channel. That's perpetualtraffic.com/YouTube. We have a Telegram group. We'll leave that in the show notes as well. On behalf of my awesome co-host and mountain biker, Lauren Petrullo.
Ciao.
Until next show, see ya.